Let me paint you a picture of corporate insanity. Saturn, the car brand literally created for people who hate cars, somehow decided to build a 205 horsepower supercharged pocket rocket. Yes, you heard that right. The company famous for no-haggle pricing and plastic body panels put an EATON supercharger in an economy sedan. And plot twist, it was actually good. See, Saturn was supposed to be GM's answer to Japanese reliability. A different kind of car company. Their slogan screamed from every dealer lot in America. No pushy salespeople, dent-resistant panels, cars for people who'd rather be doing literally anything else than shopping for cars. But somewhere between 2004 and 2007, someone at Saturn headquarters apparently went completely rogue. They looked at their sensible economy car, the Ion, and thought, you know what this appliance needs? A supercharger, Recaro racing seats, and a transmission from GM Europe's OPEL and SAAB parts bin. The result was the Saturn Ion Red Line, one of the most unlikely performance cars of the 2000s. And today, we're diving into how a brand built for automotive apathy accidentally created a legitimate sleeper that could embarrass sports cars costing twice as much. Under the hood of the Ion Red Line sat GM's LSJ engine, a 2.0-liter Ecotec inline-4 that had been force-fed an EATON M62 supercharger. 205 horsepower. 205 from a Saturn. Your neighbor's Civic SI was crying into its VTEC sticker. That EATON M62 was a Roots-type blower pushing roughly 11 to 12 psi of boost, force-feeding the tiny four-cylinder through an air-to-water intercooler. The compression ratio sat at 9.5 to 1, low enough to handle all that forced induction without turning the engine into expensive confetti. Here's where it gets interesting. Period dyno tests consistently showed around 190 to 200 horsepower at the wheels. With typical FWD drivetrain losses, that's right at, or slightly above, what you'd expect from a 205 crank rating. Saturn's numbers were honest, and some examples actually exceeded expectations. I checked my notes 3 times. This is actually true. 200 pound-feet of torque arrived at 4,400 RPM. And thanks to that supercharger, it hit like a hammer the moment you touched the throttle. No turbo lag. No waiting for VTEC to kick in. Just instant, linear, supercharged shove. Let that sink in for a moment. A Saturn with instant torque delivery. But the real engineering surprise? The transmission. Saturn grabbed the F35 5-speed manual from GM Europe's parts bin. The same gearbox found in Opel Vectras, Vauxhall Vectras, and yes, SAABs, built to handle 350 Newton-meters of torque. That F35 was a GM Europe product, shared across Opel, Vauxhall, SAAB 9.3, and SAAB 9.5. GM owned all these brands, so parts bin engineering actually made sense for once. It weighed just 99 pounds, featured an aluminum case, and came filled with lifetime fluid. Finally, GM's brand incest actually produced something competent. Engineers also tackled the front-wheel drive curse, torque steer. The Red Line got equal-length half-shafts to minimize that steering wheel yanking that plagued hot hatches of the era. Did it completely eliminate torque steer? No. This was still a 200 horsepower front driver, but it was controlled chaos rather than pure anarchy. The chassis received lowered and stiffened suspension. McPherson struts up front doing their best to keep this economy car platform composed through corners. The rear? A torsion beam. Yes, a torsion beam in a performance car. But Saturn tuned it surprisingly well. Unique spring rates, recalibrated dampers, and larger sway bars front and rear compared to the standard Ion. 17-inch forged wheels wrapped in Dunlop SP Sport 9000 tires, 2 15-45-17s. Finally, a Saturn wearing rubber that wasn't designed purely for fuel economy and quiet commuting. Now let's talk about the elephant in the showroom, the quad coupe body style. Saturn looked at their Ion and said, "Regular doors are boring, let's confuse everyone." The result? A 2+2 configuration with rear-hinged back doors. What Saturn called quad coupe, and what literally everyone else called suicide doors. Here's the thing, those rear doors only opened after you opened the fronts. No B-pillar meant easier rear seat access, theoretically, but also meant you looked like you were performing some kind of automotive ritual every time you loaded passengers. And yes, the Red Line kept Saturn's signature dent-resistant polymer body panels. Side doors, plastic. Fenders, plastic. But the hood and roof? Traditional steel. Saturn wasn't completely insane. Your shopping cart couldn't hurt the sides, though the plastic did hurt resale value when people realized their performance car had body panels that felt like Tupperware. The Red Line wore unique front and rear fascias, more aggressive than the standard Ion. A prominent rear wing, beefier side skirts, and a polished oval exhaust tip announced that this Saturn meant business. Did it look like a sports car? No. It looked like a Saturn that hit the gym, which, honestly, was kind of the point. This was stealth performance at its finest. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected a Saturn to embarrass them at a stoplight. The badge was your camouflage. The plastic panels were your disguise. You were the automotive equivalent of a wolf wearing a very sensible sheep costume. Still with me? Good, because we haven't even gotten to the interior insanity yet. Open the driver's door, or perform the ritual to open the rear doors, and you'd find standard Recaro sport seats. Standard, not optional, not part of some expensive package. Saturn gave you Recaros as base equipment. Meanwhile, Honda was charging extra for slightly bolstered seats that still felt like office furniture. But then Saturn made a choice that divided enthusiasts. They put the speedometer in the center of the dashboard. Right there, middle of the dash, like they were designing for the UK market but forgot to move the steering wheel. Your vital speed information was now a head turn away instead of a glance down. Saturn claimed this improved safety. Your eyes stayed closer to the road. Critics claimed Saturn was just too cheap to redesign the dash for the performance model. The truth? Probably both. Welcome to mid-2000s GM cost accounting. Leather seats came standard, wrapping those Recaros in hide that was acceptable. The rest of the interior featured GM plastics that were firmly good enough for the price. Not luxury, not terrible. Just present, like a participation trophy for your eyes. ABS came standard, because stopping a 200 horsepower front driver without it would be genuinely dangerous. Air conditioning, present. Power windows, included. It was an economy car interior with racing seats awkwardly dropped into it, like putting a tuxedo on a golden retriever. Now, the numbers that actually mattered. Car and driver tested the Ion Red Line at around 6 seconds flat to 60 miles per hour. 6 seconds flat from a Saturn. Auto Week recorded 6.75 seconds, and GM officially claimed 6.3. Either way, this was legitimate hot hatch territory. The quarter mile came in around 14.5 seconds at roughly 100 miles per hour. For context, the contemporary Honda Civic Si ran similar numbers. A Saturn running with a Civic Si. The automotive world had officially gone insane. But here's where the Red Line really shocked people. The skid pad. Car and driver recorded 0.84 to 0.85 G. That's comparable to an Audi S4 of the same era. A Saturn, hanging with German performance sedans on lateral grip. I'll wait while you process that. The brakes, sweet mother of stopping power. The brakes, 60 to 0 in just 118 feet. Numbers that came dangerously close to a Lamborghini Gallardo. Yes, a $20,000 Saturn could nearly match a supercar in braking. The physics checked out. Lighter car, decent brakes, good tires. Speaking of physics-defying performance, if you're enjoying these unlikely hero stories, smash that subscribe button. We find the forgotten legends that history almost erased. And now, the absolutely insane part. In October 2003, an Ion-based Ecotec-powered Saturn set a land speed record at the Bonneville Salt Flats, 212.684 miles per hour. Over 212 miles per hour, driven by GM engineer Jim Miniker. Now, important caveat, this was not a stock Red Line. They swapped the supercharger for a turbo, ran methanol fuel, added wind tunnel-tested aero, and reinforced everything. But the engine was still based on that 2-liter Ecotec, and they shattered the previous record of 183 miles per hour set by a Honda Civic, a Saturn, beating Honda at Bonneville. The apocalypse was clearly beginning. The LSJ engine earned a spot on Ward's 10 Best Engines list for 2005. An engine developed for a Saturn, recognized alongside power plants from BMW and Porsche. The engineering was genuinely excellent. It just happened to live inside a car wearing the wrong badge. The Red Line ran from 2004 to 2007, just 4 model years before Saturn pulled the plug. The Cobalt SS would carry the supercharged Ecotec torch forward under Chevrolet branding, while Saturn returned to building sensible transportation for people who viewed cars as unfortunate necessities. Today, the Ion Red Line sits in that strange automotive purgatory, too weird for mainstream collectors, too competent for ironic hipster appeal, too plastic for purists, but for those who know, for those who remember, it remains proof that even the most unlikely brand could accidentally build something genuinely exciting. Starting around $20,000 when new, these things are cheap now. A supercharged sleeper with Recaros for the price of a decent used Civic. The Saturn Ion Red Line was corporate confusion turned into accidental brilliance. A car company built for people who hate cars, building a car that car enthusiasts actually wanted. It didn't make sense, it shouldn't have worked, but somehow, impossibly, it did. If you owned one of these plastic fantastic sleepers, tell me your story in the comments. Did you gap Mustangs at stoplights? Did the center gauges drive you insane? Did anyone ever believe you when you told them your Saturn was fast? Next episode, we're covering another forgotten compact warrior that embarrassed cars twice its price. This is Car Chronicles, where we find the legends nobody remembers.